Hello. I recently was in Ukraine and it was heartbreaking. And it was my third visit since the start of the full scale invasion. And I was this time in Lviv and Odessa. One of the things that I was reminded of when I was in Ukraine was the destructive effect of the existence of nuclear weapons. And now there's an increased proliferation in the world because of the power of their possession that's been revealed by the Russian invasion into Ukraine and the response of the wider world to this invasion of an independent sovereign country, and that did nothing to provoke it and is a clear violation, the worst kind of violation of the international rules-based order. So uh, nuclear weapons is something people don't really like to talk about, and I think some people think it's a sort of a yesteryear type fear, or it just seems too much to really consider. And I completely get that. I completely get that. But I also get the fact that we all have agency, whether we realize it or not, whether we accept it or not. We do have agency. I'm sitting here recording a video, which I'm about to post onto YouTube. It's just a simple little tiny example. But we have agency in so many different ways, tiny ways and bigger ways. So I don't like to stop there. I like to kind of try to be mindful about a subject and to think deeply about it and to think about if there's anything I can do. So I can't do that, obviously, about everything, but I try to focus on the things that seem to matter the most in any given point in time, which obviously can vary. So this really struck me, and I wanted to kind of just do a brief moment's discussion around this. How do you be mindful about nuclear weapons? Okay, right. So how mindfulness approaches these kinds of issues is that you're attentive to what's happening inside your body, right? So I and if you're practiced in mindfulness, you become practiced in investigations, and you get very clear. You have less clutter in your body or mind, and you get really clear about, oh, okay, so what's really going on? Okay, and then you're less likely to project history, triggers, trauma into a conversation or a way of thinking about something, because you're used to this kind of investigation, and it helps you to be really clear about the way you see the world, way you show up, your lens. Now, I'm not an expert in nuclear weapons, not at all, quite the opposite. I'm just a human being who cares about existential risk to humanity, to life on Earth. Like most of us, if we're really thinking deeply about things. And so, and I do feel connected to all life, and it's part of the mindfulness journey, and all the journey of all of us, if we're sort of in a quiet, deeper moment. And so nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. If you try to understand nuclear weapons from a technical point of view, then you very quickly enter a impenetrable cavern of complexity. It makes you wonder if that's by design, but it's very, very. You get drawn into all kinds of convoluted ways of thinking about nuclear weapons, why they exist, why they were developed, why they were acquired, why they were banned, and why they're a deterrent, and so many different aspects of it. And you can get drawn into the complexity of it. But actually, I would argue, and I'm really happy to argue about it, really invite people to counter what I'm saying and come back to me and say, but have you thought about X, Y, Z, A, B, C? And I just, as a human being, caring about existential risk, and the fact that the proliferation of nuclear weapons is going to increase as a result of what is happening right now, thanks to the regime in Russia, um, I think that, I have a right as a human being to put my 10 cents in, my 10 cents. And so when I put all the the complexity to one side. So thank you very much. That's great. You carry on with that, all of that. That's great. Good for you. And I just stand in my own, on my own 2 feet and think about the question of nuclear weapons. What do I find out? I find out that they're insane. They're sitting in stockpiles around the world and they can annihilate the human race and cause a lot of destruction to other life as well. Through a major thermonuclear war, which could happen if there's an accident or misunderstanding and the one side starts and the other side responds, and suddenly you've got yourself on the cusp of a major thermonuclear war because people don't want to blink, don't want to if they're going to be obliterated, they fight back, right? So yeah, on any level, the concept of nuclear weapons and nuclear war is insane, really, if you think about it. Creating weapons that and a system whereby humanity is obliterated or significantly destroyed. Because you not only have the destruction of the nuclear war, I just add, you also have the nuclear winter that follows it. And there's a lot of science about that now that's recently come out that calculates just how long the winter lasts. And I had to investigate this for my screenplay, one of my screenplays. So yeah, it's not just the war; it's also the winter that follows, and the hunger and starvation. So anyway, I don't want to go there because the point of this video is to say that if you think about it, a lot of the arguments about, oh, we can't let go of our nuclear weapons because they're a great deterrence, which is Ukraine is asking this question after they gave up their nuclear weapons on the promise of being looked after in terms of security, and no, that wasn't worth the paper it was written on. So there's a question around nuclear weapons and deterrence, okay? And there's also a question around if you had a system of deproliferation, there's a problem of trust. How do you trust that if people say they're going to have less weapons, if they're going to decommission weapons or destroy weapons, how can we believe them? Okay. So I just want to speak briefly about this, very briefly. If you have a system whereby the world commits to reducing to zero over time the stockpile of nuclear weapons and also commits to not acquiring new ones, but basically the world comes together and says, yep, nuclear weapons are really actually, frankly, quite insane. We don't want to have them anymore, and we want to work out a system where we can get rid of them. Okay, now, of course, there's other categories of weapons which are problematic, but let's just focus on nuclear. Because, people use these arguments to not deal with the problem. What about this? What about that? What about this? No, so let's just focus on nuclear because clearly it's a problem. Okay, so if you have an agreement that we are going to reduce our stockpiles to zero, you've got the powers of the world that have large stockpiles and they're sort of calculating all the time about how much I've got versus how much they've got, right? Well, you just agree to proportionately reduce. So you all are proportionately reducing at the same time. So your relationship with each other in terms of how much you've got stays the same. Okay, so that's one. Seems logical to me, but, jump back at me if you don't think that's logical. So this argument about, how much he's got versus how much I've got, it's normally a he, you counter that by keeping the same proportion and reducing at the same time by the same proportion. Okay, so you're the same relative power doesn't change, the same relative amount. Okay, that's one thing. And then the other thing about trust, well, this overlooks the fact that the capacity to detect people's development of nuclear weapons is really now very advanced. So you can actually detect very well because of technology You can actually detect very well, and there's a well-developed expertise over time internationally in this space. Okay, but technology means that you can detect if people are lying. Okay, and you can have a system of penalties. So if there's an agreement to reduce a certain number of type weapons and they're typed by a certain time frame and it's not met, that a system of penalty kicks in. Okay, so that, and what happens if you do this? Okay, the first 12 months goes by, people have agreed a certain amount and it's done. Okay, nobody and anybody who doesn't follow the rules is penalised and immediately called out. Okay, and that's a penalty which is not is incentivizing them not to do that again. Okay, so it's disincentivizing. Um, okay, so there you go. 12 months passes, and oh, that worked. Okay, a little bit of trust comes with that. Another 12 months passes. Oh, that worked. More trust. Okay, so it takes time, and it would take many years because people aren't going to let go of all their arsenal overnight. Okay, they're going to do it when they can trust it, right? So if they agree to a system, which happens slowly over time, they see it's working, that everyone's agreeing, everyone's doing what they said they would do, and people who break the rules are penalised, trust is built. Okay, so you've got to do it over time. You can't just immediately pull out the rug, is my view. And so over time, trust is built, deproliferation continues, and the relative relationship between who has what doesn't change. Okay? And then by the time you get to very little arsenal left, okay, there's so much trust in the system. You might find that in the last 5, 10 years, that there's an agreement, let's just get rid of the last. Let's just do it. Let's just get rid of it in one sweep. Okay, so that's my little piece on the whole complex world of nuclear weapons and deterrence and all the arguments for them and why we have to keep them and nuclear submarines and all the money they cost to keep and now the money they're spending on looking at their existing stockpiles and realizing, oh my gosh, they're so expensive to maintain. We need to redevelop them. And now they're making them even stronger and more powerful. And so, and faster and longer distance. And the stockpile may not change, but they're just modernizing. They're modernizing, right? So anyway, you look at it, and now with all the threats and people thinking, maybe I need a nuclear weapon for deterrence or whatever, thanks to what they see in terms of Russia's behaviour and the constraints that puts on the response to it, right? So the world is tilting in that direction where there's a chance of greater proliferation. In fact, it's already now in the middle. We're in the middle of a nuclear modernisation phase, so it's more dangerous and it's not talked about. And when you talk about it, when you try to investigate it, it's all suddenly very complex and hard to understand. And there's all these very rabbit hole type of technical arguments that are you're very quickly lost in, I tell you. So I think it's simple, actually, is my little 10 cents. Conscious that I'm not a nuclear weapons expert, just thinking clearly about it. What is wrong with that idea? I'd like to know, and I will stay calm. That's my job. I will stay calm, but I really care about this subject. And as a child, I thought adults were slightly balmy, that they had this thing in the world that hadn't been gotten rid of, this threat. And so I'm nodding to my younger self and I'm saying, yes, I do have a voice and I'm going to use it. Bye for now.